Good afternoon, everyone. And for the person I will interview today, it's good evening. And I hope everyone is doing well today. And for those who will watch this on a different time zone or on a replay, good morning, good evening. I'm glad to be back. My name is Maryland. For those who are listening to me or watching to us for the first time, I'm the founder and CEO of Customized Training Solutions Private Limited, or CTS, and we are passionate about helping leaders and organizations who are continuous learners and action takers to transform and thrive in all aspects by co-creating customized programs with our world-class resources. We have served over 3,000 leaders from over 30 countries in different industries, and that includes Petronas, Sony Mobile, PruLife UK, Ayala Group, Chevron, Tencent, Jollibee Foods Corporation, and Shell, to name a few. Experts say that the pandemic will last for the next 3 to 5 years. And this is why we are organizing several interventions, including this interview, to help leaders who don't know how to stay relevant and adapt to the new normal, those who find it stressful and to lead and ensure performance of a remote team, and for those of you who are afraid that you can't keep your team or your business. And so, to be able to stay relevant and continue to lead effectively in any situation, we hope to see you in our several interventions that we organize. So, for today, I'm very excited to have our guest. And it's actually the first time I'm interviewing someone based in the US. And I'm glad I'm interviewing Ari for the first time, for someone from the US, right? Ari Zainuddin worked for over 16 years with the biggest consumer goods company, making food the world loves. Starting from associate marketing manager, navigating his way up as the general manager and management consultant before he started his own companies. And now he is the chief purpose officer and co-founder for AM Plus Brands, and director, co founder, and CMO for Decision through Holistic Intelligence, where the power of mind and the strength of character drive their agency to help elevate brands which are working on making this world a better place to live in. So nice to hear that. And without so much further ado, I'm glad to bring in Ari. Hi, Ari.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's my pleasure to have you today. And I'd like to jump in right to the interview. So basically, I'll be asking you 8 questions. The first three
Awesome.
is more on for us to be able to learn and understand from which perspective are you actually coming from. And then
Mm.
the 4 to 6 question will be, I would say, the juicy or the meaty part of the conversation. And last,
We like those.
yes, and the last 2 questions will be my Miss Universe questions.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
hopefully I understand them as well as the new Miss Universes and not the Miss Universes during the 1990s.
sure, definitely. I'm sure of that. To start with, please do share with us your leadership experience.
Sure.
If you do have like a favorite leadership style, and of course, you can also share your influencers when it comes to leadership.
Sure. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Again, thanks so much for having me. It's such a pleasure and a real honor. Um, if I think about leadership, the experience that I've had, it's kind of gone through a bit of a restructure and a reshift, I'd say. You know, when I first started, I really wanted to become what back then, 20 years ago, was called a servant leader, somebody
Mm-hmm.
who really listened to the people that you work with, your colleagues, and try to be the best that you could be to help them out.
Mm-hmm.
To be really candid, I think, I spent the better half of 20 years trying to just impose myself on other people. That was probably the reality. And then I'd say only in the last 5 years did that kind of change, where the leadership, I would say, was so much more about how do I help in any way, shape, or form to
Mm-hmm.
try to bring the best out of people. I'm a real big firm believer in just authenticity. There's almost 8 billion of us in this world. I think to some extent that's probably what makes this world really bad. But I think to a
Mhm,
really big extent, that's probably the best thing about this world is that there's
mhm.
8 billion of us, every single one super unique, every single one made to be very, very different and made to be very unique. So, maybe the best thing that we can do as leaders or in any situation is try to get the best out of that person. Let that person shine the most that he or she or they can. And sometimes staying out of their way is the best way to let that happen. So
Mhm.
that's humbly, that's kind of that's the journey that I am on right now, is try
Mhm.
to be surrounded by really great, wonderful people, great human beings trying to do good things. And if I can either stay out of their way or help them become even more impactful in what they're trying to do, I would be very happy to do that.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Are there any influencers that you'd like to share with us in terms of like how did you become the service leader as you are right now?
Yeah, and I know this probably sounds pretty cliche, but I really would say my mom and my dad were
Mm-hmm.
probably really, really big. I always looked at my mother, and she's passed away a couple of years now, but she always, always used to go back to, as long as you've got lots of gratitude, then you can be extremely generous with yourself. So that was probably one thing that I really took out from her so much, the idea of just being really, really grateful for what you've got. Because then, if you're so grateful, and when you see other people, you want them to be as grateful in their lives, and
Mm-hmm.
you want to pass your fortune.
Mm-hmm.
To them, and spread that fortune, right? And then my father, in a way that I think he was very he is a very determined individual, and he's
Mm-hmm.
very good at utilizing his surroundings and
Mm-hmm.
really getting the best out of people around him. So I would say those are probably two. You read all these books and get to know the Elon Musks and the Warren
Yes.
Buffetts of the world, and you get to know the Narendra Modis, or all these wonderful people. But really, at the end of the day, my father and my
Mm-hmm.
mother are probably the two people that have shown me the or at least are the people that I want to emulate the most.
Yes. And I love that you've shared that, one of the or the two people that you got your, you got influence from and your style from is mainly your parents. And that gives us a reminder as a parent. I'm also a parent. I know that you
Mm-hmm.
are as well, right? And as a parent that we have to be there to be a role model for our children because a lot of
Exactly.
times our children would look up to us, right? And
Yes.
they model us, I mean, and that's like, and you've shared a very important factor in life to be happy. That is
Mm.
being grateful like what you've mentioned,
Yes.
right? And being
Absolutely.
resourceful and adaptive like your father as well, right? So thank you
Absolutely.
for sharing that and for reminding parents as well to be, to always do their best to be the role model for their children because
Yeah.
our children looks up to us. And
That's absolutely right.
you've shared also obviously Warren Buffett and Elon Musk, as you said, and you've shared about servant service leadership will be for you the best way to lead people. So having said that, what is leadership for you?
Um, Um, if I really thought about having to define that, I think leadership, or where I see myself kind
Mm-hmm.
of playing that role on a little bit more practical reason or way, it's sometimes just having the ability to take a step back and being able to see the forest, to kind of
Mm-hmm.
go, yeah, I think this is the direction that we all of us agreed that we wanted to go. And
Mm-hmm.
along the way, there'll be tangents. Along the way, there'll be stuff coming from the right, stuff coming from the left, trying to deal with all that, but still making sure we're all going in the direction that we wanted to go originally, right? And in the direction that we've all agreed to. So how do I play the catalyst and play the blocker of things so that we can still keep going in the right direction? And then I go back to how do I do that while trying to get the people around me all to be the best versions of themselves, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what I want for myself. I just want to be the best version that I can be. I want to be the best father to my children. I want to be the best son to my father, the best uncle, the best husband, right? And within my team, I think every single person wants to be the best that they can be as a part of the team. So I think part of my job is to see what type of environment that we can try to incubate so that everyone can actually achieve that as fast and as as the most authentic way that they want to do that, you know.
Mhm. So I hope I've written the summary well, that leadership is being able to step back to go to the direction where
That's
you
great.
want to be while playing as
Awesome.
a catalyst, right? And
Yeah.
again, like before you ended your statement, you've mentioned as well about being the authentic version and also the best version of you for your people, for your team, for your community, for your family. And again, like whatever we do, the decisions that we make, the choices that we make, at the end of the day, it's not just about us, but also like it's about helping as well the people around us, right? And
Yeah.
I've also like mentioned in my introduction earlier, like how challenges came up when the
Mm,
pandemic
yeah.
in the last
Yeah.
almost 2 years already came
Mm,
in, like
mm,
where people like question their the 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 relevance, being
sure.
staying relevant and
Yeah. Yeah. Of
ensuring the
course.
performance of their remote team, because up until now I would say like most people are still working remotely or working from home,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And like
mm-hmm.
keeping up, although like sustainability of the business has always been like the challenge as well, even
Absolutely.
pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah.
But how would
Absolutely.
you how would you define and describe the next normal, having said that,
Mm, mm. Yeah. It's a, it's a really good question. I actually wouldn't say I come anywhere close to kind of knowing that. If you were to ask me about, okay, so what's coming up, like, we a part of what we do both in DHI decision through holistic
Mhm,
intelligence as well as AM brands, the
mhm,
advertising agency, is we
mhm,
always try to see, so the zeitgeist of the people today, how are people feeling, how are citizens feeling, how are consumers feeling, and there are certain things that do change and morph. But I would say my really strong belief is that at the core, things always stays the same. It's almost like what we are looking for and our why is always going to be the same. It's the
mhm.
how around it that changes, right?
Right.
Technology might change, digital might change. We might all have a little bit more of a hybrid working
Mhm,
situation rather than all purely at home or purely in the office. But ultimately, we will still, just like 100 years ago, we will still want to
mhm.
take care of our health. We will
Yes.
still want nutritious food. We will still want value. We will still want convenience.
Mhm,
And we
mhm,
want experiences. Certain things won't change. Those things were
mhm,
true 200 years ago. They were true 1,000 years ago. They're true
mhm,
today, and they're going to be true 100 years from now. How we do things, how we do and what we do, the type of engines that we use, the type of platforms, the type of environments that we use to achieve those things will change. So digital obviously is huge now. It wasn't 20, 30 years ago when I first started in the marketplace. 20 years from now, digital might not be there. Digital might be actually totally different. One of the
mhm,
top trends in the consumer world now is physical combined with digital. How does
mhm,
that kind of come into play? But at the end of the day, it still solves the same issues. It still solves the same desires: taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, wanting value and convenience, and experiences that are wonderful for you. Right? Ultimately, those things don't change. So I tend to, I would say, and I could be wrong. I'm most of very wrong about many things, but I I tend to focus on those things that don't change, but try as best as possible to be flexible with how we do that, because the how will change, right?
Wow, amazing. Again, like what you've said, I mean, we always go back to the principles or the basics, right? Like what you've said, people are always focused. I mean, the Maslow, um,
That's Maslow's hierarchy, and it stays the same. You need
exactly.
food, you need your family, you need shelter, and then all of a sudden, then you kind of want to. How do I be a part of something bigger? right?
Mhm.
In my life, that could be being a father, a mother, that could be about my community, could be about could be my religion, but you want to be a part of something bigger. And that stays the same. It's the how that changes. It's our clothes that change. It's
Mhm.
where we work. It's the type of car that we drive, the type of jet that we might use, or the watch that we use. But ultimately, they all are means to the same
To
ends.
get
And
to
I
the,
think
yes,
those ends, my
exactly.
suspicion as an end of one, my suspicion is 100 years from now, those ends won't change. They'll stay the same, you know? And I hate to kind of quote people because I don't know if quote, if famous people saying stuff is the right thing, but I do recall, I do recall reading something about Jeff Bezos where he was
Mhm.
asked about the future. Oh, what do you think is going to happen? He's like, well, I don't know what's going to happen. And nobody has silver bullet or a crystal ball. But I can tell you, people, consumers. He was talking about consumers. Consumers will always want cheaper, faster, better. That's not going to change, right? So as long as us, if we are all feeling that we're still always going to want to focus on our health, on having wonderful experiences, on value, on convenience, our families, and then hopefully when that's taken care of on something else, then the question is how can you as an maybe if you're an innovator in the space, if you're a change agent, if you're a leader, is how do you make sure that the how stays relevant, right? Because that's always the question. People are, oh, you're no longer relevant. It's almost never about the core issues. It's no longer families are irrelevant. It's no
Mhm.
longer health is irrelevant. It's no longer this is it. Those things stay relevant. The how you do it, the things around it, the means to those ends are the ones that potentially become irrelevant. And so maybe the job for all of us is to have our pulse, finger on the pulse so that we
Mhm.
can always stay relevant so that people can continue to focus on the stuff that matters to them, like
Yes.
family, health, value, convenience, love, right?
Yes, I totally agree with you on that. And again, it's all about, like, getting to where you wanted to be. And again, success would always be different from different people, right? And
Absolutely.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, it's just the means or the house that they have to change. And that's a good reminder for our audience or for our listeners today, right? That they need to learn as well. Continuous learning is going to be important for them to be adaptable, to be for them to be flexible, like what you've also mentioned earlier, because flexibility will be as well key in the next normal for them to be able to adapt and to be agile
Absolutely.
about, the means to get to where they want to be, right? And
Absolutely.
it's just funny that you've shared
Mm.
about the fast better, faster,
Oh
better,
yeah,
cheaper,
bigger, better, faster.
yeah, yeah, the one that Jeff Bezos mentioned. And we just actually finished a program on cost
Mm.
engineering, and these are
Mm.
billion dollars types of project. And then our expert actually said it's impossible to have all three. You only can choose
Exactly.
two.
Two, two.
You can only choose two among the
Most people, I'd say most people, most organizations, most brands do one really well. And that's fine. Most
Mhm.
people can be very materially successful doing one. But
True.
people, businesses, brands that can achieve one plus another one, those are the
Yeah.
ones that do something really, really different in this world. You know?
Yes, yes. So, we've talked um about leadership, your experience, the next normal. So, let's go back to basics again. In terms of, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you've been to the corporate world or as a corporate leader in the past for a huge organization, and now that you're working with corporate leaders as well, what would you say would be the top three problems that they normally face?
Mm, great question. Most of the people, and this is just my experience, but most of the folks that we deal with, still, whether you've got a digital platform, whether you're selling consumer goods, whether you've got a service or you're a government, the end of the day, so much of what they do and how they do it and why they do it has to do with people, humans, right? You might have a big, amazing engine, you might have a wonderful algorithm,
Mm-hmm.
but within that entire kind of S curve of your growth and within the entire value chain that you've got, people play a really significant role. That whether it's people of your own that work for you, that help you with the supply chain, the people that will help buy your stuff so that they can continue providing that kind of virtuous cycle to you in terms of dollars and value. So I think that's one big challenge is people. How do they continue to stay relevant with their people? How do they make their people just love them, continue to like them? You know, we use the word remarkability quite a lot because you want people to remark on you. You want people, you know, at least today. Today, the kind of currency is I want to love, like, share, right, and comment, right. So that's remarking on something. So how do you make the people feel like they're in a remarkable spot by being a
Mm-hmm.
part of your group, being
Mm-hmm.
part of your tribe, your journey? So I think people's kind of one big
Mm-hmm.
big thing that will always be an issue, right? Um, I think the other one, which is wonderful that we're talking about now,
Mm-hmm.
and I think has always been a problem, but it's kind of really accelerated, is the planet side,
Mm-hmm.
right? The changes. I think back in the day, and even we see that so much now. Still, like there's so many big corporations and people that kind of view the world as a zero sum game. So if
Mm-hmm.
I take this, somebody must lose this. If I gain, somebody must lose, and if somebody else gains, I must lose. And that's probably why our competitive nature is actually really bad, in my opinion. That has forced us to kind of see that in order for us to gain, we have to manipulate the environment, we have to manipulate
Mm-hmm.
the plants and the flora and the fauna. And so I think the idea of how do you get the triple bottom line, how do you get the
Mm-hmm.
people to really be amazing, how do you get to do that and do well by the planet? And then
Mm-hmm.
the last piece is the profits, right? The triple bottom line, the profits. I
Mm-hmm.
think in for terms of the profits, probably the biggest, I'd say the biggest issue there is probably flexibility. Like how knowing that this world, the rate of change continues to accelerate, how do you always keep up and how do you make sure that you are always flexible so that your how and your means can always stay relevant to always achieve the same ends that we've always had? So I in a macro sense, I always think that the big issues kind of go back to the people, goes now so much more than before, the planet, and I think that's only going to accelerate. And then the profits becomes important
Mm-hmm.
because profits almost like your lifeblood. Is your blood. Without it you can't function, but with it you can start thinking about bigger order stuff. How do I make this world better? How do I achieve nirvana? Whatever it is that you want, right? But you need that lifeblood, which is for most organizations the profit. And I think the big part about the profit is how do you become flexible so that you can
Mm-hmm.
adapt. It's almost kind of going back to Darwin, right? Survival of the fittest,
Right.
which is really survival of those that can adapt the best, the fastest, and the most optimal. So I think those three: people, planet, profits, and profits in terms of adaptability and flexibility.
Wow, that's really amazing summary. I mean, the three P's which you mentioned, people, planet, and profitability. And a lot of times, like, I've heard conversations like what you've also mentioned, that it's so difficult to balance all three, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where in fact, like, we've had a lot of, one of the realizations and reflections we had, in this pandemic, or one of the silver linings, I would say, would be to reflect and to, like, realize that it can actually all be balanced as well, right? And again, you've
That's
started with
absolutely right.
people, so that's obviously because you have to work on your people first, and that means your team, your
Yeah,
leadership, um, uh, and as well as the customers, right? Because at the
that's
end of the
absolutely right.
day, you're working with people, you're working with human, and it's important to make that, to take that into considerations. And of course, without our planet, without Earth, then where are we going? Where are we gonna
That's
stay?
absolutely right. Yeah,
Yeah. So, and the problem, I would say that a lot of the problem is because a lot of the business persons would focus more to the on the profitability side of the business.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And sometimes they forget about the people and the planet, which
Yes.
is like,
Yes.
it doesn't make sense because it doesn't make the business or like anything sustainable, right? And
That's
it's good
absolutely
to
right.
know that, right now we are aware that it's possible to balance all of those and to create really a sustainability or sustainable business. You have to take care of all three
That's
P's.
absolutely right. And it feels, I mean, on one hand, subjectively, it feels like the right thing to do. I think deep inside, we're
Exactly.
all good people that want to do
Yes.
good by ourselves, by our communities, our families, the environment.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you don't have that subjective nature, you can
Mm-hmm.
look at it objectively. Literally, go online, type in brands that are led by triple bottom line,
Mm-hmm.
companies that are led by purpose, and you'll find really fast tons of different studies. One of the topmost is done by an insights company called Millward Brown. They coupled up with a professor,
Mm-hmm.
Stengel, and they have an index of the 50 topmost
Mm-hmm.
purpose-led companies. And these
Mm-hmm.
purpose-led companies, basically, to a certain extent, they have a triple bottom line. They care about
Mm-hmm.
profits, they
Mm-hmm.
care about people, they care about planet, and they matched that their growth, the top 50, against the Fortune
Mm-hmm.
500 companies, the 500 biggest companies in the United States. These
Mm-hmm.
top 50, the 50 top most purpose-led brands, outperform 400 times better.
Wow.
400
So
times. So to a certain extent, I think all of us inherently have got that subjective manner of wanting to do better. But even
mhm.
if you don't believe it and you go, oh, that's all yoga stuff, like, oh, you guys just want to save the world, like, where are you going to find the profits? Look at the brands that are growing the most. The brands and the
Mhm.
companies and services are growing the most objectively. This is
Mhm.
pure numbers.
Mhm.
They are growing the most because they have a focus that's beyond profit. That goes, profit is very important, but people and planet also are important. So the belief, it's almost, some people call it growth mindset. It's
Mhm.
just changing your belief to kind of go, you can have your cake, you can eat it, you can share your cake, and the cake can make this world better. You can do that, right?
Exactly. Yes, and I remembered similar like conversations that we have with the futurists. And at the end of the day, like what you've said, it boils down to growth mindset, right? Because it's all about the mindset. Everything starts from there, right? The awareness and the mindset that, because that really encourages us or like helps us in terms of how do we take actions eventually, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate you summarizing these three P's in this question. And so now, I mean, you've actually offered some solutions already throughout the conversation, the
Hmm.
problem conversation. But I'd like to probably focus more in terms of the leadership capabilities and skills that are
Mm-hmm.
important in this next normal. Although you've mentioned several times about adaptability, flexibility earlier. So, are there anything more that you'd like to add in terms of what are the other leadership skills and capabilities that they should have or leaders should have in the next normal to continue to lead effectively?
Mm, yeah, yeah. I'm honestly, I'm probably a bad person to ask because I think I'm just a so-so leader. But I mean, if I think about what I wish I would do more, right?
Mhm,
I think, I think I wish I would listen more. That's one,
mhm,
because like I think the ability to listen
mhm,
um, allows you to potentially really know better the
mhm,
type of authenticity that people want and the type of leaders that each other people that are working with you that they want to become, and maybe you
mhm,
can help them become the best version of themselves, and in doing that
mhm,
you can help yourself become the best version of yourself. So I think I say one part is just listen, because you're one
mhm.
person, right? And if there's 30 of you in a team, shouldn't and it isn't it better if all 30 kind of have their minds working together and we're all collectively, so
Exactly.
all
Mhm,
of us added is actually better than 30, as opposed to everyone listen to one person? It doesn't make it makes zero sense, right? So I
exactly.
think for that person to just spend
Mhm,
more time listening, which I'm really
mhm.
bad at, so I'm trying to work on that. So that's one. And then I don't want to keep going back to the same thing, but as we mentioned before, I think the ability to just be really agile. People use agile, you gotta pivot, like all buzzwords, but it's all means the same thing. It's like, let's change, but you change because you've got the focus on the same thing. You've got the focus. That focus doesn't change. Whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. For us at
Mhm.
Ambrands, we're trying to build this as big as possible and as flourishing an advertising agency, but focus on doing good things. And we're just, sometimes you're naive. I'm naive. I'm just like, we can do this. We can have our cake. And we can make lots of money and be good. But sometimes it works, right? Which is always a wonderful thing. So I think that having the ability to just kind of go with it, go up and down, and it's okay. It's okay to kind of change. It's okay to bend. It's okay to do all this, but you do all that because you're always leading towards that same goal that you've always had. And sometimes goals might change, but
Mhm.
most of the time they don't. The same. I'm 45 years old. I've had the same goal since I was a little kid. I just want to be a good husband. I want to be a good father. I want to be a good, I want to be a good business partner to my business, the other leaders of the company, right? I want to be a good person. I want to get rid of my insecurities. Like most of us have the same goals that we've always had, right?
Mhm.
But how do we adjust so that we can use new technology? We can use a different way of doing. We go back to how it was 30 years ago because everything goes around in a cycle, so that we be adaptable, we can be flexible, agile, and whatnot. We can pivot easily to achieve that same goal that you've got. Right?
Mhm. Thank you for making that sound so simple for us. And
The simplest things are the hardest, right?
exactly, because I mean, that's when you make it simple, I believe like most people would, understand it easier, right? When
Hmm.
you make it simple for them,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm glad
I
that
don't
you.
have a very complicated brain, so I have to keep things super simple.
Yeah, and I would also agree with you. I mean, this what you've shared with us are really some of the top leadership capabilities and skills that I've been also hearing about. And Clubhouse, for example, actually
Mm,
came into picture and recently, and it's all about and a lot of people actually enjoyed it because it really like encourages us to listen, right, and it really encourages us to improve our listening skills. And again, you said agility is could be a buzzword now, and we always hear that all over the place. But yes, I mean, that's necessary. And I actually like, I'm so interested with what you shared about, like, even though you navigate change things, be flexible on the ways or the means to get to your goals, but still you have to be focused on the goals, even though there are changes that are happening
mm.
in along the way, right? Because
Yeah, yeah.
apparently it's not a straight line, especially for
It's it,
entrepreneurs
ne-
like us,
it
right?
never is, right? It never is. Even the big companies, it's never a straight line. So
True, true.
it's almost like really having a very clear definition of where you are now, and really be super authentic about it. All the good, all the bad, all the ugly, where you are right now, and then be very clear about where you want to go as an
Mhm,
individual, as your role, as the organization, and then go, okay, so how do we get from here to here? And it's never going to be, as the crow
a
flies.
straight
It's
line,
always going to be like this. Sometimes you go backwards, but you don't. You kind of always view that, right? So you're
yes.
always, and that's if everyone in the organization can do that,
Hmm.
great. But sometimes people have different roles. Some people's roles are to allow us to force us to go this way so that we can learn, and force
Hmm.
us to go this way, right? And then I think maybe part of the privilege and the honor that leaders have is the ability to, because people are doing this, you're always taking a step back and then you go,
Hmm.
are we headed there?
Our
If
eyes
I'm
on
going
the
here, but are we still pushing our way this way, so that ultimately we get closer towards the goal? And chances are
front.
you're never going to achieve that goal. That's okay. That's
Yes.
all. I mean, like, really, when you really think about it, right? It ultimately all boils down to us as an individual. And when would we as individuals ever reach our individual goals?
Hmm.
Never, never. Because even on our deathbed, we would go, I wish. I think most of us would still go, I wish I
Hmm.
can live longer so I can help inch myself even closer towards my goal. So, I think you just have the goal that's really true and authentic to you, and then you
Yes.
just work the magic that is given to you to try to get as close as you can. And I think that's what life is, right?
Yes.
That's what life is. That's what organizations are. That's what teams are. That's what partnerships are. Businesses are. Is always working towards that one goal, and to know that that goal is you get close as you can to it is nirvana. I don't think you'll ever achieve it, and that's a wonderful thing. So you're always striving. You're always wanting to get
That's
towards
right.
closer and closer, right?
Exactly, exactly. And speaking of thriving, thriving in the next normal, what do you believe is the role? I mean, we've already talked about leadership, transformation. So, what would do you believe will be the role of learning, transformation, leadership in
Mm,
being able to thrive in the next normal?
mm. What's really interesting is we talk about the next normal. Pandemic happened, everyone started working at home.
Mm-hmm.
So many businesses saw themselves flourish, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, some really, really suffered, but many of them saw themselves flourish because
Mm-hmm.
people's behaviors as consumers or users of certain platforms or users of services didn't quite change. You just did it while you were at home. Um, it's beautiful to have then the world of the internet to kind of connect all of
Mm-hmm.
us in technology. Um, I would have thought that post the pandemic, there would be so much more of, oh, let's all work from home
Mm-hmm.
because we can achieve it, we can save money, we can get rid of commute, blah, blah, blah. And or maybe a lot more hybrid. But at least from what I can see from
Mm-hmm.
our clients, from what I can see in the papers, digital papers, and what I can see
Mm-hmm.
talking to people, it seems like we're all going to go back to where it was.
Mm-hmm.
This is my prediction. My prediction is that from what I can see, and I hope I'm wrong, but it feels like most businesses that have an office are going to go back to their office
Mm-hmm.
because two reasons. One is I think there's a mindset of the leadership that kind of goes, well, if I don't see you working in the office, then you're not
Yeah.
working. I don't. So there's a lack of trust, which is really
Uh-huh.
ridiculous
Exactly.
because hasn't the last year and a half showed you anything that it is possible that they can do it in their underwear? And who cares what they're wearing? No, nobody. You shouldn't care at all because it should be about where your heart is and where your head is at. That's it.
Uh-huh.
It's about your character and it's about your brain. Nothing else matters. Whether you want to wear this, whether you have a giant tattoo here, whether you want to do it when you're naked, none of that matters, really. But there's still, I think, so much leadership that thinks it matters, thinks that if you come here, then I can know for 8 hours that you're working,
That's your
and
word.
when you're gone, then I know you're not working. Like, but so that I disagree, but my strong suspicion is that's true. There's still a lot of leadership that is go, I need you to come back because that's how it should be done. Number two, there are a lot of businesses that have buildings, real estate, leases, and they're like, I don't want to spend organizational time to figure out how best to be creative with our rent that we have to pay for the next 24 months. That's not our
Mhm,
job. Our job is selling
mhm,
iPhones. Our job is making coffee. Our job is selling a service of pet food and or pet walking services. Our job isn't real estate. So they're like, I already have this. I already signed the contract. Everyone, please come back. So that's my long-winded way of saying
mhm.
I think I think if businesses have got the capability to just listen and actually make the change and actually be comfortable with being a little bit uncomfortable,
Mhm.
I think that would really help. That would really help. What would be, as you're calling the new normal, which might just be that it is the new normal. One thing might be that it's just every single person is doing things their way, and it still all ladders up to the same goal. Still, you've got your true north, everyone's going there, but it doesn't have to be that we're all working on the same laptop in the same space, doing the same thing at the same time. It could be that people are working on all sorts of time zones, all sorts of different gadgets, but they're using their hearts in the right place and their heads in the right place, and that's all that matters. And if the leadership can just define where we need to achieve and where we need to go, then maybe they can go there a little faster and in a better, more authentic way.
Mhm. So I would say, like, if I have to summarize that, it's there's a lot of accelerations or in going on, and changes as well, and with the technology as well that has been helping us. It's possible that everyone actually work, like what you've said, in different time zones, uh, in different locations, and
Yeah.
the importance, I would say, of learning and possibly unlearning, um, in the new normal, like what we've said, right?
Absolutely. You know what's really interesting? The former CEO, excuse
Mm-hmm.
me, of LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Weiner, if I'm pronouncing his name right. I remember reading an interview with him, and it's really funny. I mean, when you think about LinkedIn, arguably,
Mm-hmm.
potentially the world's biggest recruiting platform, right? Biggest
Yes.
recruiter. And somebody asked him, this was about 3 years ago. Somebody said, "Hey, if what's your advice for people trying to look for jobs?" You know what he said? He said, "I don't even have a sentence to tell you. I'm going to give you 3 words:
Mm-hmm.
skill, not school." Skill, not school, which I love, because basically he's going, the form of learning, how we define learning, is
Mm-hmm.
constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
But we're always wanting to learn, but it's constantly changing. Maybe back in the day, it's sitting down, you've got a book, you've got a manual, you got to read it, you got to memorize it. Now, it's a lot less about that. It's a lot more, how do you gain real world experience? I remember when I was working for a big Fortune 200 company and we were recruiting 20 years ago, we'd
Mm-hmm.
ask, we only go to MBA schools, only
Mm-hmm.
top five, right? Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, whatever. We look at their GPAs, we look at their experiences, leadership experiences. Those are the questions that you want to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even if you're working for a traditional firm, one of the first questions that will come up will be like, have you started your own company? How did you fail? Why did you fail? What did you learn? How much did you lose? Like, it's like it's all going back in a cycle. It's like it's not your ability to take a textbook and learn and memorize. It's your ability to actually be an apprentice and learn in the real life. Street smarts, so much more important than book smarts. I mean, think about the people that we mentioned, the Elon Musk, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, were in school, dropped out because they had brilliant ideas, surrounded themselves by brilliant people, make shit happen. Sorry, make stuff happen, right? So it's like the idea of learning is always going to be there, but the how you learn is always changing. So maybe that's one thing we should learn, is to unlearn certain things so that we can continue to
Exactly.
learn, right?
Yes, and that will be the key for us to be able to adapt. I mean, we've talked about adaptability, agility, and flexibility, and all these will only be possible if you have the growth mindset, like what you've said earlier, and if you're open to learn and unlearn as well, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, okay, now customers are evolving, things are becoming different, technology are, like, advancing so fast as well.
Yeah,
So, like, you have to pick
absolutely.
up. You can't,
That's
I mean,
absolutely
that's
right.
that's the
And
way to go.
as a parent, you're
Yeah.
constantly being told the stuff that you've got is wrong. And you have to unlearn stuff. As a 45-year-old, I got my 9-year-old telling me that my how I think about certain things is wrong, and I'm being inconsistent to her. And I'm like, that's so right. You're right. I need to unlearn 45 years of doing something because it's not the
Exactly.
right thing, you know?
Yes.
But it's not easy, right? It's not easy to have a 9-year-old tell you how
That's
to think,
true.
you know. But that's
That's
but having the ability to know that a
true.
9-year-old can actually teach you many things, I think it's a wonderful thing. Not
Exactly.
easy, but it's a wonderful thing.
Yes, yes. And it's good, it's a great experience for us as a parent that, we get to learn from our children. I mean, one of the COOs I've actually interviewed in the past, he said, like, in this situation, or at our age, being, wow, older now, is that is that
Wiser.
wiser now, is that, you also have to be humble to
Mm,
be
mm.
able to listen and learn from those people that are younger
Mm.
than you, because they will definitely have great ideas that you can learn from, right?
That's absolutely right. I mean, we do this on both ends of the spectrum. You're like, either you're too young, you haven't experienced, or you're too old and you're irrelevant. But really, at the end of the day, most of them can teach us a lot more than we can teach ourselves. You know?
Yes. And we if we keep on learning and unlearning, then we can still, possibly be staying relevant and adaptable to,
Yep.
whichever times it is, right? So,
Absolutely.
now I'd like to actually move to our Miss Universe questions.
Mm-hmm. Oh my
Our
gosh,
last two
that's one.
questions. So I just wanted, I mean, you've actually shared with us a lot of great ideas, insights as well, and very authentic comments that, from your experience and from what
Mm,
you do.
thank you.
So I'm just curious to know, if you have a magic wand and can use it, what will you do with it?
Ah,
And
if
if
I
you
had a
do,
magic wand.
and if you can share with us why, feel free to do so.
Yeah,
Why
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you chose that?
Yeah, I do have my attention to detail is horrible. I'm really bad. So when I first started as an associate marketing manager, I almost got fired many times because my attention to detail is really bad. The reason I start there is because I tend to kind of think really big. I love macro. I just love thinking about macro. So the
Mm-hmm.
answer to your question about having a magic wand,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost kind of like somehow or another my brain goes straight into what will I fix
Mm-hmm.
rather than what is amazing to the future. I said, what would I fix? I
Mm-hmm.
probably in humanity for humans, I fix two things.
Mm-hmm.
One is somehow or somewhere along the line, I
Mm-hmm.
think men, males, my kind, I think we really screw things up. I think, somehow or another, we're a very insecure
Mm-hmm.
species, and somehow we were able to utilize some form of physical strength to create dominance, and then from that a whole system to create dominance. And like Lenny Kravitz had a wonderful quote when people were asking him what he thought about the hashtag Me Too movement. He's like, well, listen, at the end of the day, males have dominated this world. They've totally effed it up. So let's not have them do that. Let's give the women a chance. So I firmly believe, and I'm a big culprit that has added to this. I think males have really screwed up so many things about our civilization and our humanity.
I'm
So if
sorry,
there's
but I
one magic,
can agree on you on that.
and if there's one thing I would do, I would somehow or another go back in time, use that magic wand to actually change that. Right? That's one. The other one is actually is still related to number one, but it's almost like what has probably been one of the worst things that these males have done in having their own magic wand is colonization. And I don't know. You go back to the past, you change it, something else would happen. It might be even worse, but assume that it doesn't. I probably change that. I'm a product. I'm being from Malaysia. Malaysia is the British colony. There you just see so many bad things that come from that, and you kind of wish that all of us had the ability to do what in the cinematic comic world of what Wakanda did, to just be their own and let history kind of take them to kind of achieve whatever they wanted and what fate would have had for them, right? And so I don't know. I mean, I would change those two things. I think if we change male dominance and we change colonization,
Mm-hmm.
my wish is that everything that is wrong with this world today would probably be a lot less bad.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be
Wow,
what
that's
I would do with my one. And then if I still had that one, I'd give it to a female. After I make those two
there
changes,
you
I give it to
go.
a female.
Here's a one for
I give
you.
it to my daughters.
I have a one here. I wish
I
your
like
your
your I like your one because it looks more like a toothbrush.
it's actually a unicorn.
That's the best one. That's the best one. A one that actually has a unicorn on it.
Exactly. Yeah, so thank you. I'm glad to hear. I mean, you're also a male, and you've actually
Yeah, I
shared
know.
that, and
And
that's
I
also
speak out of experience because I also grew up in a society that was very male, not just dominated, but the fact that I was male, it almost I everywhere I went, I almost felt like I was up here. Which why? Why? It was totally wrong. It's totally wrong. And
Exactly.
that's
Especially
why
in
I've got two
India, right?
girls and I've got very strong-willed and strong personality wife, because and that's that's what I want. That's what I think this world should be.
Yeah.
My daughter see me do the laundry all the
Girl
time, and
power.
I
Girl
make dinner every night, and that's what I want. That's what I want them to ask their partners in the future to do, and expect them to do that.
Yes, it's again all about balance, and not necessarily to be just more on female or women leadership, although it's very good if we have that, but at least a balance of both, I would say, would be really helpful, right?
I would agree. The only thing to consider is how we get there, because if today it's like this, you can't
Still.
be on the fence. If you're on the fence, it's only going to be like this. The only way to do that is you go super hard like this, so that over time it then balances out. Because right
Mhm.
now it's not balanced. Right now it's like this. And the
Definitely.
only way to balance that is that you got to go this way really hard. So it goes,
Yes,
whoa,
considering
right?
there's like so many things going on, awareness and like campaigns, and a lot of women are starting to step up. I mean, we've seen a lot of countries that are doing well during the pandemic, and which are led by women, right? Um,
Yep.
and that actually gives like more opportunities to more women to step up as well, right? Because again, it's women should step up.
And men
It's
should
not
get out of the
about
way, because a lot of men
exactly.
have actually um, created a system that makes it impossible to do
Mhm.
that.
Yes, true, true, true. And so that leads me to my next question. If you were to ask yourself a question that you can best answer, what would it be? And please feel free to let us know what's your answer as well
If if
with
I
that
can
question.
say that again, if I can what?
If, if you were to ask yourself a question that you can best answer, what would it be?
Huh, okay. I think I understand what you're trying to say. Um, I would say it's almost like how are you able to almost always have at least an outward persona of 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 almost glass half full or glass half empty, but it's almost like having the outward persona that glass is overflowing, always overflowing, right? It's like I and that's I pride myself in being almost like a over overly zealous,
Mm-hmm.
overzealous optimist, right? Like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, things are awesome, it's always going to be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now I would go back to the first question that you asked me, which is
Mm-hmm.
about what my mom taught me, right? What
Mm-hmm.
my dad continues to teach me is about being grateful, because I
Mm-hmm.
really am. Like I'll not lie to you. Like, to be completely candid, every morning when I wake up at 3:30 every morning, and I got 2 hours just me in the dark. I'm doing a little bit of work, doing a little reading. I got two cats, and my wife and my kids are sleeping, and I'm so happy to be able to do that. And then I drive to the gym and I see the ocean, I see the sky, and I'm so happy that I can go to the gym and have a whole hour just by myself to really sweat and push myself. I didn't hurt myself. I'm so happy and grateful. And I come back and I gotta wake up my wife's already up, but my two daughters, and then have breakfast with them. And I'm like, how amazing that I have get to have breakfast with my family and then drive them to work and then come back and then, have these wonderful people that I work with, all trying to make this world better and trying to make me a better person. They show me the flaws of my ways, that sort of thing. So I really truly, there's, I think, a big part of naivety in me, but that's okay. I don't mind being naive because I'm really grateful. I'm so grateful. So many things. And because I'm so grateful, so many small things are really meaningful to me.
Mm-hmm.
The dinner tonight, I made a little bit of curry, and the curry I made is using Brahms. I don't know whether you know Brahms, but like on the island of Maui where I live, there's no Malaysian food. So I ordered on Amazon Brahms and I made chicken curry, and it was like so delicious. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I get to have that in Maui. And I'm genuinely really, really happy that I had that. And that my kids can have that, a little bit of taste of Malaysia, while we're here in Maui. And I think that's probably it. I just I'm very grateful that I'm like this. I'm also really grateful that I'm very, very grateful for things. But that's probably the question. It's like, how is it that you're always so bloody annoyingly optimistic about things? And I think that's it. I think there's a really big element of luck. I've been very, very fortunate, and sometimes that luck might not be there. But I'm also just, I think, just really grateful over things, and that's not my own doing. That's my parents. My parents, my sister, my brothers, growing up, they're the ones that instilled that in me, right? The ability to always be grateful, which with gratefulness, gratitude, comes the ability to be generous that you want to give, right?
Mm-hmm. True, true. Did I get this right? Let me show it to you. How are you able to always be grateful and positive?
Awesome.
So that's the question. Wow.
That's a much better way of saying it than I said it.
Because you've shared also some stories and like something about that, so like how will I
Mhm.
like but basically making your life awesome is just being grateful even on the small things that that you experience, that you have, right? And again, that makes you more positive and grateful for more things that comes up into your life,
Mm.
right? And
It's
that's
easy. I think it's easy for all of us to be grateful over the big things. When we go on wonderful vacations, when we land a wonderful job, get a big bonus, or have our first child, or you know, go on a first date, like these big, big things, you know what I mean? Or retire, whatever, right?
Mhm.
But like, but those things don't come very often. But having
Yes.
a wonderful cup of coffee can happen 3 times a day. For some people, 7 times a day. And if each one of those feels really amazing to you, like how amazing can life be? You know what I mean?
Yes. If we just actually, be thankful for like all the small things that we have shelter, that we get to learn from people like you, or like now that, even if we are on lockdowns or we have limited travel, we are still able to connect with each other because we have internet.
Exactly.
Imagine in the past if we don't have internet, like
Do
how,
you know
and like
when I
even
left
sipping
home?
coffee.
I left home.
Coffee.
That's totally right. I left home when I was 17 years old. Something. I went to Scotland for A levels, and I remember there's no internet then, right? So I had to call my parents once a week, collect call. And when that lady's like, call my mom answered. Then I hear my dad in the background going like, "Hey, you speaking to Azrael? Like, hey, you better be fast. It's so expensive." Right? Like, and I was like, and then I was such a bad writer of letters that it was hard for me to keep in touch with my friends. And now I'm like, the minute I'm just taking a walk and I have 10 minutes, I just FaceTime my dad and he's at
Mhm.
the supermarket. And it's so nice to be able to talk about meaningless things because they become so meaningful that you don't have to save it up for the week and give you everything that's happened. I'm just like, "No, I'm just taking a walk. What are you doing?" So I'm buying groceries. I'm like, "Oh, okay, what are you eating tonight?" And I'm like, then you feel like you're actually living with them, right?
Yes,
It's the
correct. The
ordinary things.
connection.
Yes, is when ordinary things become extraordinary. I think
Hmm.
it's a wonderful thing, which again goes back to authenticity, because if each one of us can just be our authentic self, we're just being ordinary, we're being
Hmm.
a normal person. How extraordinary is that?
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's really beautiful, I would say. Um,
I
before
just
we
came
end,
up with that right now. No, I'm just joking. Pretty sure I
yeah,
stole that from
I'm
somebody.
sure. I'm sure you do. Yeah. So before we end this interview, is there any message that you'd like to leave our audience with?
um Well, obviously, I'd love to put a little plug for my companies. If anyone wants, is trying to look for a purpose-led, change agent in either an agency or an insights company, please look up Ambrands AM and
Mm-hmm.
DHI-AI, artificial intelligence. Um, but yeah, I think I'm very, very grateful that you have invited me to this. It's nice to be able to wear a suit. I don't wear a suit very often, so thank you very much. You've given me an excuse to do that, and I've really enjoyed myself. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. And I really appreciate you, Ari, for being so authentic, so passionate, and purposeful when it comes to your answers. So I really appreciate
Mm.
that, and I'm sure one way or another, our audience will be inspired with your message, with your
Hopefully.
reminders, right? And that's what we want at the end of the day. That's why we wanted to do this. So thank you so much, and again,
Thank you.
thank you everyone as well for watching, and even those that are watching on a replay. And please do join us in this journey to fight the pandemic that has caused challenges to some, and let's all turn it into opportunity through several interventions like these, that we can help you with as well. And remember that you mentioned about Warren Buffett earlier. Even the richest investors like him would actually say that investing in yourself is the best investment you can ever make in your life. So with that, I'd like to leave everyone with this quote from Dolly Parton, that if your action create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and become more, then you are an excellent leader. Thank you so much,
Awesome.
Ari, and thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have
you,
a
Mel.
nice day
Really
and stay
appreciate it.
safe, everyone. Bye for
See you
now.
guys. Bye bye.